Hi, everybody. I'm John Stevens, and this is my aortic dissection story. Before my aorta dissected, I was just, I was an auto worker and I was transferring back and forth from my hometown of Youngstown to Bowling Green, Kentucky to build Corvettes. And this particular Sunday, my wife Tracy was going to spend the week in Kentucky with me. So I was really excited, just to have her down there. Um, she said I was very chatty in the car on the way there, which was unusual to be chatty at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning on your drive to the Pittsburgh airport. So we get to the airport and we get out of the car. We parked kind of far away than we normally do in the Pittsburgh airport parking lot. Um, I had a backpack, and I'm sure she had probably at least a small bag. And we were making our way into the building to where the people mover, the little, whatever you call it, the people mover, where you walk across the floor and it kind of moves you. I was really out of breath, like ridiculously out of breath. Didn't feel any pain. There wasn't, I didn't think anything of it other than this is unusual. I can't breathe. And she was way ahead of me. And I said, Trace, you got to wait for me. Now, remember, I'm on the people mover and this is happening. So I kind of just lean there and she waits for me. And I catch up to her and I'm back to normal. I'm kind of thinking, okay, we got it together. So we get off the people mover and we make our way to the TSA. I don't think we checked bags. That memory kind of eludes me a little bit, but I don't think we did. It was, a short visit for her, and I already had stuff in Kentucky. Well, we get to the TSA, and I'm still like chatty. I'm just excited, and she's coming with me, and here we go. We're gonna have a good week. And we get to the TSA, and I remember a guy. We get through like where they check your license, and there was a guy that didn't push his bag through the X-ray machine, and I was hacked off. I was just, dude, you got to put your bag through the X-ray machine. It's the way it works. So I sorted that out in my mind. I made a couple comments to Tracy, maybe a little bit loud enough so maybe the guy would hear, and I get through that part. I get my shoes, I get my bag, and I sit on this bench over where the train takes you from the TSA to your gate. But something was wrong. It didn't hurt. I felt no pain. It wasn't like ripping, tearing, any sort of pain. And I was really dizzy. So again, I said, hey, Trace, but loud. And she thought I was just bugging her to hurry up, like husbands do, that I do. And she's like, what do you want? And she came down and I was passing out. But not only was I passing out, I was out cold. So I kind of woke up from I can't tell you how long I was out for. It could have been a minute, could have been less than a minute, but I passed out. I peed my pants. It was, something was seriously wrong. And her initial thought was that maybe I had a stroke. And I remember her saying, she was like looking down, like she was in front of my face. And she said, honey, we're not going to Kentucky. And I didn't understand what, I knew something was off, but I didn't understand what was happening. And she said, you peed your pants. We're not going. Something happened. And she said that I gave her like a confused, not angry look, but what's, certainly a look. and I passed out again. And that was the last thing I remembered for at least a week. I was out cold. Um, and that's the funny part is, well, it's not funny, but Tracy could probably tell the 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 the, the major part of the story because she was there for it and I wasn't. I remember not very much. Um, I felt no pain, so that's a really good thing from what I understand. Um, was in the ambulance, and I'm unconscious, and I'm fist fighting the poor the emergency workers. I can't tell you why. I can't tell you how. I can't tell you what I was saying, but I was irate, cussing and swearing and just bad news. They had to stop the ambulance to subdue me and get me restrained and just to get me to the hospital. I get to the hospital, and again, I don't know anything that's going on. I'm gone. I'm out. And the surgical team at the hospital in Pittsburgh just finished up a surgery with a guy. And remember, this is a Sunday morning. I'm guessing at this point it's probably 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, maybe. And they finished up a surgery that early, and they took me in, and they got a CT scan on me, and immediately discovered that I had a Stanford type A aortic dissection, which, again, I wasn't there for it, but my wife was, and she was very familiar with it because my cousin Dan, several years prior, he also had a Stanford type A aortic dissection. So we were kind of aware of this disease problem, and they performed the surgery on me. And while they were in there, they did a bypass on an artery in my left ventricle, if that sounds right. And they resuspended my valves and fixed my aorta. That's when the real problem started, though, was, you spend the first 24 hours with your chest open and you're unconscious. I didn't want to wake up, and I just wasn't waking up for days. And during that period when I wasn't waking up, I had a fever and my kidneys went crazy, and they weren't sure if my brain was going to recover. All manner of things that could go wrong when you're in that state were going wrong. I finally woke up, like I said, about a week later. I don't know exactly how many days it was. And it was kind of like the old David Lee Roth videos where I had a row of doctors standing around my bed, all in my face, telling me how lucky I was. And I immediately knew that I don't know if I knew, because even though I was unconscious and in a coma for a week, if I still was picking up information unconsciously, but I immediately had my mind wrapped around with the idea that this happened to me. And when they told me, it didn't shock me. I didn't freak out, but I was certainly in a bad way. I wasn't breathing properly. I was panting. And my wife said it was like I was panting like a dog. So they gave me some time to try to get my breathing under control, and I just couldn't. So, but I was aware. I remember that day that I was up briefly. I was texting people, telling them that I'm alive. I'm going to be okay. I was with it that much. but I was certainly messed up. But I was there. Um, what happened next? The breathing was so bad that they had to put me back on the ventilator. And I was probably about as mad as I've ever been in my entire life about anything. I remember I punched the bed because I was so mad about it. Because if anyone that's been on a ventilator will tell you that that is it's torture. It's it's the worst thing that you can have and live through, and you remember it. And so they knocked me back out, and I was out cold, and I was back in a coma for a number of days. During that time, the second round being on the ventilator, my toes turned black. And we still never really got an explanation as to why, but the tips of my toes were very like bruised looking. And I don't know if I can't even speculate why. Like the medications or lack of oxygen. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but it happened. Um, so that was a couple days of that. But I think that my wife and kids kind of knew that I would come out of this because it was induced again, and I kind of feel like the situation might have been just a little bit not as dire, when you first go in. So I woke up the second time, and when you wake up the second time, they take the vent out, and I was awake, and they take out tubes, but I was at least breathing more normal. Maybe not, I was on a vent for practically 2 weeks. So you're not, your muscles, you don't, it's not a thing you ever think about in your life, but when the way you breathe, when you're on a vent, it's breathing for you. So you have to acclimate your lungs and your chest and everything just to breathe like a normal person again. So that kind of came around after a couple days, and eventually my kidney numbers started getting back to a better number, and they never have. My kidneys have never. My kidney, my creatinine, and my GFR has always been just since this has happened, always been elevated, and it's just my new baseline. Um, you know, that's just is what it is. But another thing that I remember is just being with it again and wanting to like listen to music. And I remember watching TV in the hospital, and things didn't look right. Like not visually, but not like in the way that you would think. Things were just off. I had this superpower, and I never really told the doctors this because I was worried that then I would be committed to like another ward of the hospital. But I had this weird power where I could look at like a TV and cut and paste it and move it with one eye over, or it was bizarre. And again, it's probably just medications, but that phenomenon lasted me at least a month afterwards. So I had fun when I was laying around just moving things with my eye out of the field of vision to another place. Very weird, very strange. That went away. Um, the lady that does the physical rehab, she came in and wanted me to walk. We're talking like the next day after I was off the vent for the second time. And that wasn't fun. She said, we're going to try to walk to the hallway. And I think they got me out of the bed, and I guess it's technically a step, but it was more of a fall into the big chair. And that was all I had in me. I didn't have the strength. I had the will, like I wanted to be able to walk. I wanted to be able to go to, which is another story. I wanted to be able to make it to the bathroom because I knew even then, like I knew that if I was going to live any kind of normal, have a normal life again, I'm going to have to make it to the bathroom. So, walking was at that time was my first giant challenge. It's not that I couldn't walk, but it wasn't because I was paralyzed. I didn't have the strength. I couldn't to and I remember like I walked 20 steps, and it was like what I imagine running a marathon would be. Very challenging, just hard. The hardest thing physically I ever did. And that went on for, oh geez, at least 6 to 8 weeks. Just it slowly built up, but it was tough. It was very tough for me. And I don't know again if that was just part of the damage neurologically that I might have taken on when this was all happening. Um, I lost the tips of my toes, went numb. My right thigh went numb. My right shoulder was pretty much out of it was numb. I couldn't lift it above my arm, and it was numb, but it also hurt really bad. Like that hurt worse than the incision in my chest. That was tough, and we finally decided. I kind of sweet talked my way into, well, sweet talking in my way. I didn't want to be a hostage anymore at the hospital, was the way me and the surgeon, the thoracic surgeon, talked about it. Like, you know, the way I put it is if I was going to die, I'd rather die at home than in the hospital. That was my mindset, even though I don't think I was really going to die, but that was just my John's way of being theatrical. We get home and I had a walker, and that was another thing of mine that, like, another point of like a goal was to not have to use a walker, especially I was just 50 at the time. So I think I only used the walker one time, and that was when we got out of the car to get into the house. And after that, I never used it. It doesn't mean that I was running circles around the house and taking care of myself and getting to the bathroom by myself and those sort of things, but it was definitely a goal not to be dependent on the walker, because I figured then that it would just, if I relied on this walker, that would only take more time to get back to semi-normal, which at that time I didn't know what semi-normal was, because I had the impression, and my wife did too, and so did my kids, that you'll be back to work and you'll be fine in 6 months. And it was a solid 18 months. During the time that I was home, you go to your checkups and everything, and all the doctor's appointments say, then the CT scans was saying that I was doing fine. Well, a strange thing was happening to me. I felt like I had the flu and I couldn't get past it. And my ankles were swelling up and other things on me were swelling up, and it was horrible. And I just was just a miserable sod. There's no other way to put it. I didn't like the dogs. I couldn't eat food. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't essentially shower like myself. I could get to the bathroom. There was nothing was good at all. Nothing. I would try to eat dinner. I would try to do things with my wife, just go to lunch, go to dinner, and I just couldn't eat. I couldn't. It's not that I didn't. It's not that I didn't want to eat. It's not that food didn't look good when you put it in front of me. Just I was indifferent. Well, it turned out that I had heart failure developed during this time. So my EF, well, let me take a little step back before I talk about my EF. So basically the whole summer went by and we had a trip to Disney planned, just a quick weekend trip. It wasn't like I was going to go ride rides, but I was going to just try to get out and sit by the pool. Everyone can go do their thing, and I'm cool just by the pool. But I I knew something. It wasn't making sense to me why I wasn't recuperating at the rate that I felt like, and what everything that you read, everything that the doctors are saying should be happening. So my wife takes me to the local hospital, and they do the blood work, and the essentially I forget what it's called offhand. It will probably come to me when we're done with this story. But the water levels in my blood were like 37,000, and normal is like 100. So I had heart failure, and I waited in a downtown hospital for 17 hours during COVID. And that's the other thing. This was all going on during COVID. When I was in the hospital the first time, they can only visit me one at a time with a mask. And I remember, like, it would seem like every other day they were taking a COVID test of me. And I'm just, that was the least of my problems. So the cardiologist at the local hospital, he told me, like, yeah, you have heart failure, your EF's 32. So they put me on the proper heart failure meds. And that's when my recovery started to, oh, there's a mosquito flying around me. That's when my real recovery started coming around, where I was able to eat again, sleep again. When I say I didn't sleep a normal sleep, over a year. And I wasn't even really so much concerned about it. I just knew that there was something more wrong than what was, than just this aorta problem. So it was probably, we're now into like October of 2022. And it's when it occurred to me that I'm eating again. And I lost a lot of weight. I was 195 pounds starting out when I got sick, and I was down to 148 pounds, which for me is just way too light. Sure, like, it's pretty neat to fit into, size 28 jeans, I guess, but it's not me. Like, I looked like just bad. But I started eating again, and that's when I knew, okay, we're getting somewhere. And slowly and gradually, as time, the year went on, things started. I was able to sleep again. I was able to do little things around the house that I really couldn't do prior to that. Like, I didn't have the strength, or the anything to do simple household tasks. Like, sure, I could fold some laundry, I could unload dishwasher, but things like that I like to do, couldn't do it. And I couldn't stand it. It was bad. But that came around. But with the heart failure came a whole nother issue that I have now, is the dizziness. If I lay down too long, or if I'm in a corridor, like, just think about, like, if you're in a mall and it's a long hallway and there's a weird pattern on the floor, I'll get out of my mind dizzy. And it doesn't, at first it scared the crap out of me, because I'm thinking, okay, this is happening again. But it wasn't that. I knew that if I calmed down and just kind of sat down, recuperated, the dizziness would subside. But the dizziness is still a thing that I deal with. Numb toes is still something that I have. Um, the sore shoulder has, I don't have full mobility that I used to have, but it doesn't hurt. So I'll take it. Um, yeah. Then this is still with the heart failure. In January of 2023, my cardiologist suggested that I get a defibrillator. So I got a defibrillator installed, and that went okay. That wasn't a big deal, other than the scar that it left, like kind of underneath my armpit area, is uncomfortable, and it's never fired off. It's never done anything. It monitors my heart, which is a good thing. Every Monday, I check in with my little monitor, and it sends my data to the Cleveland Clinic, and it's kind of a nice little thing to, comfort, to make me, know that everything's still going well. With the defibrillator, though, I learned that, I have to get my CT scan every year, and those come out okay, within the normal range of what's acceptable. And my EF has improved to 44, which is great. And I'm kind of hopeful that my next EF, I'll be over the 50% threshold, which is a normal ejection fraction for heart failure. That's my story. So thank you all for listening. And yeah.
That was an excellent story. Thank you. Thank you. Let's say hi to some of the people that joined us. We've got Tom and Stan and Velda and somebody I think is Mustang Ken, Katie, and you have a friend from Australia, another Ken.
Hi, everybody.
All right. So while they're finishing up your story, we're going to be 20 seconds ahead of them.
Okay.
A couple of questions that I almost always ask. The first one is about the medications that they leave you off on. As everybody in this community knows, there's no playbook for aortic disease. We're going to hear about whether or not you have beta blockers, whether you have blood pressure medications, so on and so forth. There's Dean. Dean says hi. Did you have to go and change your medications very often in that first 18-month stint?
Yes. My medications at first, I was on 10 milligrams of, am I saying it right, metoprolol? Is that how it's pronounced? And really, there wasn't much of that. I was on a potassium pill. But when the heart failure was diagnosed as a serious problem, they increased my metoprolol to 150 milligrams, Entresto, spironolactone, the aspirin, and Farxiga. So those are the meds that I'm on, which really, when you think about everything that I went through and other, I don't feel like that's that extensive of a medication list. I would have thought that, you almost died and you had your aorta dissect, and I would think, you're going to be on 100 pills a day, and it's really not. It's a small amount.
Yeah, mostly for blood pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you so did you have any adverse effects for that metoprolol, did you say? Is that the first thing that they had to change?
Yeah, they increased it because they wanted to keep the blood pressure down, to keep the repair intact. And also with the heart failure, that's when I think between the metoprolol and the Entresto is when I think the real dizziness really kicked in with me. Not that it didn't happen before, because it did, but it really like knock you on your butt. Like, wow, let's go type of a situation. And it still happens. Still, I'll just have to catch myself. And, a couple of weeks ago, we were at the grocery store and we were in the candy aisle, and My dizziness, like, I think a lot of it stems from visual. I, I, I think. And we were in the candy aisle, and it just looked funky. And I was holding on to the end rack, like holding on to it for dear life. And people probably were walking by, like, look at this guy. I would have said, look at this guy, you know. But after, my wife calmed me down and said, you're okay. And I'm thinking, oh, here we go, here we go. No, it's just part of it.
And so this just comes and goes, specifically in
This,
corridors, vertigo corridors.
yeah, oh yeah,
I get
it comes and
vertigo
goes
with
for me.
wild patterns, vertigo.
Yeah, I don't get the wild patterns. I just get this, like, the planet rotating. Like, I sway to the right. it's, it's the craziest thing. We'll walk on the bike trail that's close to our house, and I pull to the right like I need like a front end alignment. Just and
So
sometimes I
listing.
don't. Oh yeah, yeah. And it's not always there. If I'm in a wide open space, yeah, whatever. It's like, on the bike trail there's trees overhanging, and you're kind of it's a long narrow, and it's like those haunted house tunnels that spin. It's kind of like one of those.
Yeah, when I'm referencing the wild patterns, I'm thinking of all the different colors that the candy
Oh,
has, or the
I
weird
got
pattern
you.
on the thing. But now, like you're looking at branches, kind of reflecting light all over
Yeah,
the place. Um,
in the floor too.
yeah,
LAX, for instance, has like a wild floor, and we were in LAX one time, and it was just totally tripping me out. Like, okay, I gotta catch myself here, and I know what it is, but when it gets really intense, it's you know back of your mind. I'm thinking, okay, let's take a step back and just kind of chill,
yeah,
and that's
that's interesting to hear because it's interesting in the fact that very often we hear about people that talk about balance issues, but they don't use the word vertigo. They don't say dizziness. They just say balance issues.
yeah,
And so I'm curious to know if there's a crossover there. Like, are they also experiencing vertigo with their balance issues, or is just balance off? But yours
right.
has a specific trigger, which is also very interesting because some people are there. It just comes and goes. Yeah.
Yeah, after 3 years, you kind of get accustomed to it, but when it really comes, it's still scary. You're thinking, oh, here we go, and is this going to happen again? And it doesn't. You know, and I've been assured it's the blood pressure, it's the medication, and when you think about it logically, you know, when the meds are fresh in me, that's when it's probably more so. And then as the day goes on, it subsides. But getting off you've heard this probably 1,000 times. When you have this and you have the low blood pressure, getting off like the ground is that's a task. That's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Okay. So another one that we talk about. You've heard of the term pump head? No.
No.
Okay. So for some people, again, I have to dance this dance. For some people that go on to open heart surgery, they lower your body temperature. They put your brain on something cool, keep everything kind of low. They really drastically reduce everything. And for a byproduct of that is short-term memory loss. And so some people will have this thing where they walk into a room and they completely forgot what they were going in the room for. They'll be in the middle of a story and it'll just go away. They're just gone. Just whatever that train of thought is, gone. Do you
I
find
think
any of
if
that
you ask,
happening?
not so much my train of thought. I think I'm probably worse with names than I used to be, and I was never really good with names. But I think anymore, like, I mean, if you ask my wife, she'll probably tell you, yeah. But I'll be talking to my daughter, and the dogs will be laying there, and I'll call my daughter Dobby, and I'll go, or whatever your name is, you know. So maybe that's part of it, or maybe that's just the product of being 53. I don't know.
Oh well, it's probably, could be a couple
Combination.
things. Yeah, it could be a couple things in there. Did you name
Yeah.
one of your dogs after a Harry Potter character?
Oh yeah, he
What
looks
kind of
like
dog is it?
Dobby, an Italian Greyhound.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Look up Italian Greyhound. You'll be like, oh yeah. Yeah, that's Dobby.
I definitely will. I definitely will. Hi, Bruce. Bruce jumped in.
Hi.
He's another person that gave us his story. He's awesome. Okay, so when early in the healing process, there's also some changes in temperament, right? For some people, they talk about like their short fuse is the best way for me to put it. They find that they're close to anger and small
Yep,
things set them off, and it's a
that's me.
wild change in their. Go ahead, share with us just a little bit. Like, does it still happen? Was it really just in those early days?
When I first came home, and I mean, I think I still have a, I don't want to call it a short fuse, 'cause I don't have a short fuse. I mean, I'm on 150 milligrams of metropole. I mean, that chills you out. But I don't like I don't tolerate nonsense as much as I used to, and I have to say especially my current physical state. Not that I could do anything about anything before I got sick, but I tolerate nonsense way less. And when I first came out, it was my poor wife had to put up with it, and I feel bad about it, and my kids, and even the dogs. Like I remember the dogs, I didn't really want the dogs around me, and if I feel bad about it now, but I understand what you're saying. I definitely had. I wasn't. I mean, I was a. I don't know how to put it. I wasn't the most pleasant character to be around, for sure. But I also wasn't sleeping or eating.
That
So
sleep thing, as somebody who has, I have to adhere to a sleeping pattern or
yeah,
days to get back to it. And I can tell you right now, on the third or fourth day of maybe 2 hours of sleep, maybe,
yeah,
I am unintelligible.
yeah.
I'm angry a lot. Like that's another thing that happens on the third or
Yep.
fourth day. I get angry, like angry, like a weird, like I'm simmering when I wake up.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh, I can't believe this is happening again. And usually it's that. It's like, I can't believe this is happening again. And I take it out on the world. So
Right.
I really felt for you on that one. I hate not getting good sleep.
I I could tell you a little bit about it. I'll keep it quick. The first night I came home, I crashed in bed, and I remember I laid sideways, almost like in a fetal position, just kind of curled up, and I just was out. But after that night, there was no sleep. I would start off in bed, then I went to the recovery. We had a recovery chair. Went to the recovery chair. Went One night I tried to sleep in the car. I slept outside on the back porch. This went on for months, months. I would sleep, and then I would finally fall asleep at like normal, like at I don't know 7 o'clock at night in bed. But it was only because I went a whole week without sleeping. So I would, and then dummy me would think, oh, okay. I would say, Tracy, I found out. Okay, now I can sleep. No, no, that was just a crash, and it would just start over, and it went on. I'd sleep in my daughter's bed. I'd come out to the couch. This went on every night for months. I can't even tell you how many months.
That's
6 months.
brutal. That's super brutal. And I mean,
Yeah.
the big thing here is also like, as we take in your story, the heart failure, the requirement for the medication, that change, the lack of sleep. Sleep is the biggest thing for healing. Like it's the whole thing is slowed down for you until they get this thing addressed, and
Yeah.
that is brutal, brutal.
Yeah.
Um, after you get home and you're doing physical therapy, were you pursuing anything like cardiac rehab? Was that prescribed for you?
Yes. I started cardiac rehab in July of 2021, and that was one of the things that concerned me, was that I wasn't improving, even though I was going to cardio rehab 3 days a week. I'm still going to cardio rehab, and I'm going to go until I. This is just a recent thought that I've had about it. Um, I'm going to continue cardio rehab until my EF is improved to over 50%, because I kind of look at it as I'm taking maybe a sicker person's spot at the cardio rehab that could, not that they wouldn't find a spot for them. I understand how it works, But if my EF is over 50, and I walk up to 25,000 steps a day now. Today, I think I have 12,000 steps. I get my walking in. No matter, I'll walk in a circle in the house if it's bad out, or if it's too hot, I'll put on a black and white movie and just walk for the hour that the movie's on. I'll watch football game walking. It's just what I do. It's my main goal every day is to get my baseline is 10,000 steps. I get my 10,000 steps. Everything above that's great. And this year I think my average is 16,000 steps a day this year. But 3 or 4 days a week I get over 20. So that's how far I've come.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear. I have to be honest. For the newer patients that show up in the community, walking is quite literally the best exercise you can ask of yourself. We had a gentleman, Jack Crow. He's one of the founders of Aortic Athletes. His story, he called his cardiologist after he got through the dissection. He was like, "How am I?" He's a massive athlete. He runs marathons, the whole nine. And he's just like, "How am I supposed to get on my feet again?" And the doctor was like, "Listen, I'm going to want you to walk tomorrow for 2 minutes. And then the next day, I want you to double that for work for 4 minutes. And then you're going to double that again. So you're going to walk for 8 minutes. And you're going to keep doing this until you're healed. All right. And it's all the baby steps. It's all, don't push yourself, but push yourself, but definitely don't push yourself. Walking.
And when they say it's a marathon, it's a marathon. When I got home, we had like the visiting nurse come over and we would walk. And I started off walking from my back window, the back of my house, to my front door, which is maybe 70 feet, maybe, and that was all I can do. That was it. And I was stoked that that's what I got that day. I mean, stoked. And I remember I made it to like doing 10 of those one time. And I remember telling my wife, like, I walked in 10, I did it 10 times. And, and now I can walk forever as long as I don't get dizzy. I could go forever. Now, jogging, I can't, like, I don't have the balance. I don't have it's weird. I used to be a track runner in college, Division I, and I was a sprinter. And I can't even imagine running even a jog 50 feet, not because of cardiovascularly, but the balance.
Yeah, definitely the vertigo for sure. The only other question that I would ask is, so the physical therapy is part of it, right? But then what about emotional or mental therapy? Are you seeking anything there?
Yeah, her name's Tracy.
The wife.
Yeah. I never, where I'm a little bit different. Like, things with me are very, is what it is. I may not like it, and I may have my moments. When I was very sick that summer in particular, it was like every day at 7 o'clock, I would cry, just cry. But once I would cry for whether it was like 1 minute or 5 minutes, I would sob on my wife. Then I was okay. Like, it was like, okay, all right, let's go. I'm okay, and do it all over again until the next day at 7 o'clock. But I'm a talker. I'm not afraid. Like, I've told my story to so many people, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. And I think that's one of the things that I'll tell anybody, any gory detail. My kids know that I like pictures. I've got so many pictures from when I was in the hospital that if someone wants to see, I'll show them. Like, I don't have shame in that. I don't, you know what I mean? If it helps somebody, they may go through it themselves, or they may have a friend or their husband or wife or their parent go through it. If that picture or what I tell them helps them, just one little bit can help somebody. So that's why I tell my story. And I think that's why I never really needed to seek, maybe I should have, but maybe about other things,
We're all different.
But I honestly never really, I don't get freaked out about it.
Yeah,
Never have.
if you're
Like,
not struggling with depression or severe anxiety, I don't
no,
I wouldn't force you into a therapy session at
no,
all,
no.
you know?
One thing that when the first time that we went back to the Pittsburgh airport and I saw the bench where it happened and went down, that was weird. That's weird. And I sat on that bench. Had
On,
to,
right on. Yeah.
had to. And
Okay.
I got up. But the other thing though that I have that I don't know if other people, my wife is she's strong. So
That's great. That's God bless, right?
yeah,
Hey man, they're angels, the
yep.
ones, right?
And there you have it. I lost it at the
You
very
saw it.
end.
You were doing fine. So, hold
No,
on.
honestly,
One more
my
thing.
wife, yeah.
One more thing. Do you have any advice for the newly diagnosed or somebody that's new out of surgery?
What I would what I would just tell people is you have to just understand that everyone goes through it at a different pace. Somebody like you said earlier, someone could recover in 3 weeks. Someone could recover like me. I don't even think that I'm fully recovered because I don't know if you ever fully recover from this. I don't think you do. You manage. Everything I do now is just, even though I do things, I pre think it. I think about what I have to do to get whatever I'm doing done before I just don't jump into I can't. So I think like what I would advise people is just take your time, don't beat yourself up, and do what doctors say, don't overdo it. If you overdo it, you're going to probably hurt yourself. So just kind of go easy, go with the flow, you know.
And I skipped a beat before that.
Yes.
In the beginning of your story, you mentioned that a cousin of yours was afflicted.
Okay.
Right. So
This is where my
hold on. But there's
yeah.
that genetic component of children, so on and so forth. And so, did you pursue genetic testing? Do you have a plan for imaging for your children? At I think they say 10 years before your incident is when you really want to be sure that you have imaging ready.
Okay.
Right.
Right. Um, my daughter, she's an audiologist, so she's kind of more medical based. She's on top of it. She's nervous about it, so she went to the cardiologist. My son, he hasn't, he's a boy. He'll deal with it when it comes. My cousin, he had his dissection when he was in his 30s. He was a state trooper in New York State, and he went for a jog, but he felt pain, and you know, he he his was different. He didn't go through like the post problems that I went through, but he recently just had lower his abdominal aorta repaired, and that was bad. But he's doing okay. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. We talk to each other. He's taught me a lot. Like he's kind of like my reference. Hey, what does this mean? And he knows.
Yeah,
So smart dude.
also a massive blessing, and that also might be why you're adjusted so well to this. One of the
Yeah.
biggest things in the community is the isolation. Very many dissection survivors only meet each other through connections like this, right?
Right.
Um, One of our lovely listeners, Velda, she was on Canadian broadcast radio, and
Uh-huh.
somebody reached out through Aortic Hope Facebook, found her, and was like, "Hey, I'm in your nearby in your your neck of the woods, and I've never spoken to another survivor." And she had the opportunity to go out and have coffee with this gentleman. They talked for hours, right? And
That's good.
that's so cathartic. It's so cathartic to get that isolation out of the way. So
Right.
another blessing that you had somebody that was on the path ahead of you, and could help keep things in perspective. That's, I mean, it's not the kind of club we want anybody to be part of. You know what I mean?
No. And and my cousin Dan he's more my brother. Like he he's my dude. He's a goofball, but he's my dude. Um, on top of him, though, his mother had a dissection and they repaired her. My other aunt, which would be his mom's sister, she dissected. She had a repair. They both lived. And so there's at least 4 of us, and there could be possibly 2 more. The other 2 passed away from it. Well, but we're not quite sure because it's a family thing, and yeah, they're a little bit older, they're just like, "Oh, whatever, we don't know. Their heart went out on them.
I got
You know what
you.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I got
But we
you.
did the genetic testing and nothing came up. There was no components. Nothing was found.
Not that they know of. And that's the other thing, right? We have to be careful about how we say this. We had a genetic counselor on, and he was explaining to us the rate at which we're seeing the new information come through. And it used to be that they wouldn't see any real gains for 15 years. But now they're saying if you've submitted your genetics in 5 years, you could probably submit it again, and you should do this on a 5-year thing just to keep adding more data to the situation and see if they can help push the thing along. But 15 years ago, machine learning wasn't really anywhere.
Right.
AI wasn't, or for all we know, AI wasn't around. So we've got everybody in chat just kind of saying hi to you, and so I want to thank you so much for your story, and I want to wish you the best healing possible. But before I let you go,
yes,
tell us about your wife.
She's cool. She's very, very feet on the grounded. Doesn't worry. Her thing is you don't worry about it until something bad. Like obviously you go to your doctors, but when I was sick, she wasn't going to worry herself until something really bad happened. You know what I'm saying? And that's I have to kind of live up to her standard, because ultimately she's right. You can worry about these things and you can fret and drag yourself down, and it'll only make things worse. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't get your aorta checked. You shouldn't. You should. But when the crap's hitting the fan, you need someone like Tracy, because you'll get through it.
You married a rock, sir.
No, I did. And, I can't tell you how many people said, "Oh, your wife had to have been freaking out." And I'm like, she don't freak out. She doesn't freak out. And she never will. At least not in front of you. So
that's
she's
awesome.
good.
That's super awesome.
Yeah. And I do. I really think that she's part of the reason why, I can keep one of the reasons, a piece of why I keep my peace of mind, is grumpy and as miserable as I was and sick, perspective. I have numb toes.
maybe this person. Jay Wado says the goat.
Well,
and Velda says thank you, John.
You're welcome. I'm glad. I hope I can help somebody with my tale. Well, anyone that goes through it knows something, and you just don't know if you ever go through it. I don't want to scare anyone how bad it is. It's a thing. It's bad, but there's hope. You can get through it. You can do it.
Absolutely. And also, helping people is a thing, right? So we love that. We love that other people can identify with different parts of your story and go, that also happened to me, or that's what happened to me. That breaks that isolation up very much. But the inspiration to get others to tell their story, and that, sir, that is what I will always thank you for.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Tell these nice people, have a good night, and to say,
have a good night, everyone. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it, and I hope everyone's doing okay.
One parting here thought. Stan says, an amazing couple, John and Tracy are. I agree. Bruce, thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Like and subscribe. We'll see you soon. This was the last weekend of Aortic Dissection Awareness Month, and we were so happy to fit you in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody else, have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you soon.